Hello, everyone. Hope you all are washing your hands, constantly staying safe. We would like to thank you all for joining us for today's very special webinar on Let's Make the COVID Safe Path app better. My name is Saurabh, and I'll be your host for today. Let me begin by telling you quickly about what Safe Path app is. It's a project by MIT and is solving an amazing problem statement at a crucial time where we stand right now. uh, as we all know, the coronavirus has shattered the lives of many across the world for health and economic reasons. And many around the world want to reopen the economy, and we can see the repercussions of what happens when the economy is shut for the longer time in US and many other countries. We can see how badly people want to get out of their house, to reopen the economy, to feel secure again. And SafePath is doing exactly that by helping communities flatten the curve of COVID-19 together. More about the app once Jonathon begins the session. And our speaker for today is Jonathon Wright, of course, who's CTO for Digital Shift and is based out of Oxford, UK. He's frequently in demand as a speaker at international conferences such as TEDx, Gartner, Oracle, AI Summit, and more. Jonathon is the QA lead for the COVID SafePath MIT project and will be showcasing what the project is all about and how you can contribute to this great cause. Before we move on, we want to give a shout out to our email partner, HandySense. As you all see, we are in a situation where we have to communicate during this lockdown, and sending out emails turns out to be a very effective way of communicating with the customers. And emails always remain an important customer channel, but still a lot of companies face issues in terms of delivery. And that's exactly what HandySends are solving. HandySends are a trusted reseller of Twilio Sendgrid. They help in delivering transactional and marketing emails through world's largest cloud-based email delivery platform, which will empower you to communicate not just with emails, but also with other channels like SMS and WhatsApp. And by the way, they have an amazing giveaway for all the attendees here that will be revealed at the end of the webinar. So stay tuned for it. Today we have people from across the world, from countries like India, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, US, UK, and New Zealand to name. And before I pass it on to Jonathon, I just want to give you a quick heads up on how this webinar will be shaping up, but just a few house rules to note. I mean, consider. We will be shooting polls at timely intervals just to keep the engagement going on. You can ask all your questions right into the chat window. If you have any questions that you want to ask, just shoot it over there. At any given point, if you have any questions, just click on the raise hand button. If you can find that on, you can see that hand icon on your dashboard. Even if you click that, someone from our team will unmute you, and then you can speak directly with Jonathon if you have a larger question. We'll be having a Q&A session at towards the end of the webinar, so you can ask all your questions to Jonathon directly, and we will pass on those questions under the chat section. So without taking much of the time, I'll pass it on again to Jonathon. Jonathon, over to you.
Thank you for that kind introduction. It's great to be here. I hope everyone's staying well and staying safe. This is obviously a really great opportunity for you to make a real difference and save lives. We've got a lot of content to go through, so I'm going to kind of skip through too much of the background about myself. You can check if you want to contact me directly. I've got my Twitter handle at the bottom. It's easy to find me on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/in/automation. Nice and easy to get. Okay, so let's start with the a bit of an intro into the actual project itself. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how it kind of started, what it does, and how you can get involved. And I'm also going to do a little bit of a quick demo as well. So, you know, if it goes a bit too fast, you can always watch this on demand once it's finished. So partly what you may have all already heard about things like contact tracing. This is something which I'm here in the UK, and the NHS I've been working with on a project called NHSX. But I've been involved with the MIT project, and I'm helping lead their testing in production now, as the application went live today. On the Android site for Haiti and some regions in the US. So if you can't see it straight away, don't worry. I'm going to show you how you can access it as we go along. So let me give you a bit of an idea of what contact tracing is and why it's so important. So first of all, for everyone who's listening today, part of it is it's to work out whether or not you've been exposed. So it's going to privately log your data. So that's data that's logged on your phone. It's not going anywhere else, and you've got full control of it. It's not sending that information anywhere. You get to choose whether or not you export it. And the reason why is the applications there is if, for instance, you was infected and you was going to your local health authority, you would be able to share this information, choose whether you could share this information for the last 14 days of your activity. So I'm going to give a bit of example how that works. And obviously from a public health perspective, reliable contact tracing, removes those false positives. It helps inform the public, and it also has a level of accuracy because we're taking that mapping data. And of course, and we'll show you in the demo how you anonymously get rid of, private data. So things like your home and work, anything which can trace back to you. So let me give a bit of a background. So the first scenario really is someone like myself. So I would, download the application onto my phone, which I've got on my iOS phone here, and also on a number of different devices, which I've got plugged into a dock here for testing purposes. So I've got the app now, and it's saying that there's, I know it's quite difficult to see, that there's no known contact that I've had. Now, if I quickly go into my exposure history, you can see that since I've been using this mobile app every day, which you can see is green because it's cross-referenced, and I've actually not left the house for 35 days. So, obviously I'm all green, but the scenarios which we want is people that actually are interacting. So first of all, GPS is one of the technologies, and also you probably already heard about the work that Google and Apple are doing on a new Bluetooth API, which will be used for this proximity-based location. So you can use both kind of technologies. Now we're starting with the GPS, and then we're going to move into Bluetooth as we go live. So again, let's kind of just get that story of, well, why is this so important? So kind of from a top left-hand side of thing, you've got someone who's got the symptoms and actually potentially has caught the virus. I give an example, a real-world example. My uncle is in hospital at the moment, who's caught COVID-19 and is in a critical state. So they would have asked him to actually upload that data and help identify potentially other people who he's come into contact with, and if he's a frontline staff, part of it is he's going to have to travel around, and he may have interacted with people while they're doing the grocery shopping, maybe while he's traveling to do assisting other people. So part of it is there's people that potentially have got it and they don't know, and then there's other people that are not infected, like I've just shown on my mobile app. So at the moment, everybody's one step behind. So there's no way you know that you're infected because you don't know who you've interacted with. So this is the importance of contact tracing. So it's a great example. This has come from Apple and Google, but the idea is you periodically kind of check to see if you've interacted with anybody. Now, remember, that's just cross-referencing your GPS, GPX data with what's coming from the health authority, and you can select your health authority. And the second thing is, part of this is it's anonymous data. So, with the Bluetooth technology, if you have sat next to somebody, which I'm going to give you the example of, it can use that data and it gives you a unique key which can't be identified or traced back to you. But the idea is it will push you a notification to say, actually, it might go amber and say you may have coincided in the same geolocation, location for a certain amount of time, or potentially if you were in the same location for a long period of time and you had somebody in your home or house, it would also then be able to tell you that they potentially have there's someone who's interacted with you and then maybe has infected you. So I don't know how much of you know about South Korea and how the fact that they were able to help flatten the curve. And the reason is if you look at the information online, it's back to this patient 31. So on the 29th of January, there was somebody who was, not feeling great. And unfortunately ended up in hospital. And so they'd interacted with a lot of people. In fact, they'd interacted with about 1,000 people during this when they'd got the actual fever, when they'd gone, into a hotel, attended a church, and then also obviously been in the hospital. So part of it is by the time it was patient 31, there was a whole stack of contact tracing information, and that would the interviewer in the healthcare professional had to go through and say to them, what time did you attend church? What time did you go to the hospital? Because we're going to have to backtrace and notify all of those people. So, that is great if you've got great memory. I don't. So, the fact that this is, Google by default tracks 650 locations per day of where you go around. So if you've got an Android phone, that location information is already there, and that's every 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes it knows where it is. And you may be thinking, oh, this is a bit scary, and I don't want to share my data, but I'm going to show you how it works and how you don't have to worry about how your data is being handled. So I also mentioned about the fact that people might actually interact. So the NHS in the UK at the moment are using the RAF bases, are testing the proximity of the Bluetooth API by people walking past who are obviously fully protected, and just to see if that person hovers with them for too long, what potentially could, how long it would be, and would it set off an alarm on the phone or not. So part of it is it's really important that about that there's two type of beacon data. There's your GPS data, which you're probably all familiar with when you hit location, share your location data. And I spoke with the UK government a couple of days ago, who was saying about obviously there's legislation across the EU about sharing data, and obviously there's policies in place in each country with different laws around how much access people have to your data. And we've seen some of the kind of historical events in the past, such as Cambridge Analytica and Facebook, and we're trying to learn by making this a privacy first, privacy by design led project, and also to improve things by opening transparency. It's an open source project, anybody can get involved. There's this great website on here, testandtrace.com. Go and check that out if you want to find out a little bit about what this technology is, but there'll be all the links available at the end. So let's fall back to the little bit to the actual technology for a second. We talked about the fact that there's two parts of the application. There's the first bit, which is the MIT COVID Safe Paths app, which is what we're helping test at the moment. And that really tells you about your exposure. It also tracks you and gives you information, lets you allow you to share information with your public health authority. And also on the technology, we've talked about it, the fact that it uses GPS, it uses the PACT and GLA and the PEP-PT standards that are out there at the moment. And then there's this safe place
Jonathan, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me? Just want to check on the audio.
Now we can. We lost you for like past 2-3 minutes or so. So if you
Okay,
can
where did I get up
take a
to?
right, if we just take a step back and cover the last thing that you were discussing, so that we can resume from where we left.
Okay, perfect. So I'll resume from here.
Okay.
And the other areas are probably okay as far as content. So part of it is I kind of was just highlighting the two sections. First of all is the SafePaths app, which is what we're helping test at the moment, which is going live, which has gone live today on the Android store, and we're just pushing it through onto the Apple Store. Now this is for exposure notice, so it'll give you push notifications. It'll also give you access to your tracking, so your tracking information from Google. So this is the Google Takeout. If you've not seen that, I'm going to demo it in a second. We talked about some of the technologies you can do, so that could be things like GPS and Bluetooth. And then on the right hand side, this is the privacy by design aspect. To provide transparency, your health professional would sit down and interview you and retract any information that could be potentially traceable back to you. So this could be things like your PII data, so you kind of your location data, where you work, anything that's makes it traceable back to yourself. And really this gives you a bit of it gives you confidence around what you've done and the timeframes off there. And I mentioned before about those 650 data points, 7,000 a week, which Google are capturing. So I'm going to do the demo. Let me know if you can't hear me again. But yeah, so here's the demo. Here's one we made yesterday. When we're talking to some government officials, this is the kind of I'm going to report myself. So a bit like my uncle who's got COVID-19, he would load this up. He would choose his health authority. So that's the first stage which he'd do. So he'd click on the health authority and he'd select an endpoint. So this would either be the NHS, or if it's in the States, it could be the Mayo Labs guys that we're working with, or Cerner, or some other organization. We put that endpoint in, and then we'd go down to Google Map and we'd import the last past locations. Once we've imported those last 14 days, we would then be able to share that information. So in this case, we could share it by email, we could share it by a more secure method like Google Drive. And what you're sharing is your longitude and longitude information. So as you can see here, there's no data that's identifiable. I know that was very quick, we'll go back to it. But what you do is you load that data up into the Safe Places redaction tool. So this is some data that someone's donated of their movements over their period of time before the lockdown. Now it's artificially, because we're using test data, dummy data here, we've artificially made it for March, so that way we can start using it for tests. And as you can see there, one of those travel locations is going over 100 miles an hour, and that is a fast, high-speed network, which is a train. So what we can do is we can remove travel out of it completely. We can select the different icons to remove individually the actual values, and you can see the ones in pink are where you've actually stayed for a long time. So that could be a hotel, that could be your place of home. So they're the ones we'd have to probably look at removing. And then you've got the yellow ones, which is where you've stopped for a small period of time. And you could drill down into that. And the idea is, as they interview you, you say, well, actually, I came to this location to see a client, or I came here for, to visit family. I can change the data range to the last 9 days, the last 5 days, so you can make sure it's relevant, so you can walk them through. And then once you've got that data and you're happy with it, we hit the save button. And what that will do is that will export that that interview into a JSON file. Now, the great thing about this now is that we can publish that information. So you can see we've exported that data. We're now going to go to the publisher and then publish that data to an endpoint to share with the health authority, which could be the NHS, it could be some other organization. Now, we're going to open this up to kind of questions. I know we're already just going to do a quick poll, but if you notice, this is running on a local host. So this is actually going to be running within a healthcare organization. So there's no way this data is going to go outside of that. Now I'm coming back in with if I'm someone like myself who's going to check on that historical data. So what that does is it checks my GPS information with the information we've just published to the test authority. In this case, we've just created a test, not a health authority, but just a standard test authority. So, that's the quick demo of that. I'm now going to go into kind of some of the testing side of things, but we're going to just open to a quick poll just to see if you're interested in getting involved and potentially next steps. So I'm going to push it back over to the organizers. So could you start the poll up?
On the screens.
Perfect. So there's two kind of options. It'd be great if you can take part in this. Would you be interested in taking part of this project? Yes, tell me how. Or no, I just want to kind of know about it. So there's kind of two views. Let's try and get some feedback. And I'm going to help you at the end to tell you ways to get involved with the project. So option one, get those polls in. And then let's get back to let's see what those results are, and let's get back. So at the moment we've got really a really strong involvement. 80% who nearly 90% are interested in actually getting involved with this. I'm going to show you how, and I'm also going to show you some of the technology behind it of how it all fits together. So let me talk a little bit for those who kind of don't know about digital twins. I'm going to talk a little bit about digital twin technology, because that's what we're using in production to be able to generate a model of what it is. You can check out, this is my TED talk, which I did a couple of years ago around cognitive learning and how we learn from a production system and bring it back. And I'm going to just give you a bit of a flyby kind of view of what digital twins in and why it's relevant to contact tracing. And then we're going to go into a few more demos and show you how it all fits together. So these are the kind of things that I do for clients. So there's all sorts of things from smart city projects to IoT. These are kind of the projects, which is why my involvement with the project appeared, because I'd done some contact tracing for a smart city project a few years ago, which I'm going to go on to and show you a bit of a demo for. But let me first start with, well, what is a digital twin? Because some of you might not be familiar with the term. I've been kind of talking for the last 6 years around shifting right, and that's kind of how you use a model of the real world to inform your testing on the left hand side, or inform your development or idealization or whatever it may be to make your product better. And so this is kind of the next step along. So, but it's not something new. That's the good thing about it. I'm not going to spend too long about the backdrop of why it's not new. But 50 years ago, I think it was about a week ago, that actually NASA used this technology to create a digital model of the Apollo 13. So that way they could actually look at how they would change that to fix the problem that they've got, and then upload it. Now, of course, now with augmented reality and mixed reality, we can actually, as you see with the HoloLens 2 there, you can actually physically see representations of digital twins. But actually more recently, it's actually this concept is being used for the product lifecycle, so kind of what we do in software development lifecycle. And I've just finished writing a chapter on cognitive engineering and shift right, which kind of talks all about this. And on the right hand side, you can see this a great example of a smart city project. So infrastructure to X, kind of smart city, car2X, all that kind of technology. So, that helps us generate models to how we test these systems. So the example which I'm going to give you quite quickly is one that I did in 2015 to help with a smart city project in the city of Copenhagen. So we, part of it was a challenge around, a bit like contact tracing. We were taking historical GPS information and real-time GPS information and making recommendations on how people could improve their CO2 emissions. So this was things like, less travel on things like car, more on bikes. We had about 38,000 people that were actually going to be using it, who worked and lived in the city of Copenhagen. We were obviously looking at a lot of metrics in a gamification. There's a lot of aspects to the big data exchange. So, complex data. But the challenge which we had was generating the historical data for something that we'd not actually launched, as far as creating a digital twin. So this is actually, as you can see in the bottom right corner, this is recorded back in 2015. And a good friend of mine put this demo together to kind of give you an idea of how it fits. And we actually used this.
Jonathan, we lost the audio again.
Hey guys, sorry
Yeah.
about that. I think
Now,
lost audio again. I'm not quite sure what's up with GoToMeeting today. But yes, this is a kind of a demo of it. Taking that GPS location, taking the longitude and latitude data, and emulating with real devices. So it's injecting GPX information into those real devices, so that they're emulating walking around Copenhagen in different multimodal types of journeys. So things like bikes going at 12 miles per hour, people walking at 2 to 3 miles an hour, people appearing at one location and then appearing at another using the underground and tube system, metro. And then, we're bringing all this data in to then create historical information. So, really kind of complex, but it was something that we had to do for that project, which is what we've applied some of the same approaches to, and been working with a number of teams who are helping volunteer to do things like cause and effect modeling to be able to generate the types of scenarios what we need, which is I interact with you, I'm in the same geolocation for a certain period of time, so therefore what I should see on my exposure history is that I've been potentially could have caught something due to this interaction at a store or something like that. So I'm going to go on to a little bit about a digital twin and the technology that we've used. One of the technologies that we've used is Eggplant, which is this ability to take a model of something. So we took a model of the mobile app and then generate all permutations of it. So we generated about 10,000 synthetic automation tests that go through and do exploratory journeys through the mobile app. We also use this model to actually then drive the testing, so the automated testing. So we've took us about 5 hours, which was a couple of days ago. We generated 9,000 different journeys through the app, 250 kind of test cases that were generated out of it, all from this digital twin. So on the left hand side you can see the digital twin in action. So it's going to open the device, it'll do that kind of initial kind of sign up, access to location data. It's now going into the dashboard and choosing a health authority. Then it's going to move to the next section, and it's going to keep on going round and round, testing various different scenarios and capturing whether or not the information on the screen is correct, whether or not it's set the right, say for instance, trusted source. The great thing about this is it actually allows you to go across platforms. So we've already seen that the SafePaths mobile app isn't just a mobile, it's also a web tool. So what we're able to do with this is we're able to log in, send that data to a health professional, so an NHS worker, for instance, then open that up in the viewer and then retract that information. And we're not bothered, we're not just using Appian, which is obviously a mobile technology. We're able to use the Google from a kind of a Selenium, what you normally do with Selenium, and also, other third-party applications such as an email client, or Google Drive if you're sending that information to do Google Drive. So you can see this was recorded on Wednesday. It's going to do another scenario now where it's going to actually go in, and the good thing is we're using image-based testing. So we talked about model-based testing briefly, but that creates the model and all the flows through it, but we're also using IBT, so we can actually look at the values. The 22nd of March, we're able to extract the color, so it's green, it's not amber. We're also able to extract the date, what's in there, so we're using OCR, so things like Tesseract, to pull that data off, and the OCR engine would then write that to a file. So we've got that kind of data as well. And you know, these demos are obviously available to look at down the line, and I'm going to show you some of the technologies that we've used, because part of it is I'd like you guys to actually get involved with actually doing some of the crowd testing, which is our big call to action now. Is we're also running a number of NHS fundraisers this week. I'm also doing some work with the British Computer Society, who are also trying to get people to actually, you know, sign up and start testing this mobile app in live. And we're going to use some APM tools to create a digital model based on what you're actually doing in production. So there's some telemetry data that we've embedded in there, which we're actually able to see that you've gone through and you've done the share location history flow, and that you exported that JSON file. And then we can also see, you know, some other information further down. So this is the power of being able to deal with native apps, with web apps, and also hybrid apps. So, you know, that's a great example. The next one is, you know, I'm going to take 2 seconds to say, you know, all what I'm going to show you here. If you want to get involved, you can send me a message right now. So that's help@coronavirus.fo. I'll then send you on all the links that you need to join. They're going to be at the end of the presentation, so don't worry if you think you might have missed out. But you can email me directly, and I'm more than happy to kind of go through, you know, talk to you about your experience. You don't need to be, you know, an automated tester or a security tester or a performance tester. You could just be multilingual, so you could understand English and Indian or something, and help with the localization testing, because we need people in every country with all your historical information. So, you know, I'm going to give you kind of that kind of call to action first. So, you know, exploratory testing, so literally going in, playing with the app, you know, trying a few scenarios that we've been working with the team on Slack and Confluence to kind of build some test scenarios up that, and some charters, testing charters. Of course, if you're able to do functional or, you know, automated testing, that's great. You know, we've got access to licenses and tools that have been kindly donated by the companies that are on this presentation, and we can get you signed up for those. We're doing performance testing. I did a performance advisory council session with a call to action with those guys, and get the performance community involved. The security kit community is also getting involved as well. But, you know, also this localization testing, the UX stuff. So you can see there, I've changed the language to Chinese. And then obviously, you know, part of it is, will the text, you know, overlap? Can you read the information that you need? Are the translations correct? You know, does it fit on the form factor? You know, as far as the screen size, you know, there's all sorts of different types of comfort, you know, things. Now, this is, you know, the big ask, which I know, you know, a lot of people may say, well, actually, I don't want to share my personal data. So I want to kind of give you an idea of how sharing your data can help. So I don't know if anyone's seen takeout.google.com. If you go on there, you can export any of your data, so your Google Drive data, your, all your email information. You know, you can get all the data that you potentially have stored with Google, and they'll send it to you. But what we're interested in is just your location data, and we're using that so that we've got some deltas. So for the city of Copenhagen, what we did is we got a whole stack of university students to use a GPS logger and walk around, go to cafes, go to lectures, and then upload us the data and share it with us. Now, as you see there, you know, you're exporting the format in JSON. You can download it. You can visualize it yourself. So, you know, you can actually say, you know, I'm going to go and look at my personal data and see where that information is. So I've literally just exported this. You're going to see that I'm going to go back into a particular year. So I got back all the way back to 2014. And what I'm going to load is a little tool called gpsvisualizer.com. And what that allows you to do is take that file that you've just exported, and then export it to any other format. So we're using GPX, which is a standard format. So I can take that JSON file and create just a flat format with just your location information in it. I can also export it into different other types. So in this particular example, I'm just going to visualize it on Google Maps, because I think a lot of people will be familiar with Google Maps and how that works. So I'm going to map my own personal data. So this is data I've taken from 2016, and then I'm going to visualize it. Now, obviously, I can export it to any other format and donate it or sanitize it using the sanitizing tool, which I've showed you. But part of it, as you can see here, if I go down to Silicon Valley, when I was based in Santa Clara, you can see with the red spots where I spent most of my time. So this has taken snapshots, and if I just hover over the different locations, you'll see things like various different companies that I was helping out, and the locations. And so these were all stops that kind of went to. Also, if I click on it, you can see that I was at the old Apple Infinite Loop location before they had the donut on that day at that time. So
Jonathan, we lost the audio. Hello? Jonathan, can you hear us?
Hi guys. Yep.
Yeah.
You can.
No.
I'm back again. I have no idea why it keeps on dropping me, but yeah. So you can export that data, and and that would be a big help. So we're using these deltas. We're synthetically generating from the deltas millions and billions of historical journeys, so that way we can test. So it's a big thing, and obviously it's whether or not you'd be prepared to share your test data. We'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. There's other things if you don't want to share your data. So there's another project which I'd highly recommend, and I've created an easy bit.ly link. This is something you could do as well. So I've been helping with the world's community grid since 2004. I've donated 22 years of CPU time to things like cracking the human genome to help with cancer and AIDS and other pandemics. They're now swapping compute time into helping with the COVID-19 vaccinations. So that's a great charity you can do. And what that does is it uses your CPU when you're not using it. So if you're leaving your laptop on all day, or you've got a PC on all day, it'll run it in the background. As soon as you move the mouse, it just stops and waits until you finish using the machine, then continues using the CPU. So that's an easy app which people can download and make a big difference to. Of course, the project that we're talking about now, and we're going to go into some questions in a minute, but and another poll, the main links for you to go off and find out more I put on there. So of course there's the MIT SafePaths website, which is at the top. That on there's all those links that I've got below. You've got the join sign up, which is the sign up on Google Docs, but there's a backlog because people are obviously volunteering. The next one is that you can also access the Git repository. So like I said, it's a completely open source project, so you can access the Git and also the latest versions of the iOS build, which I'm going to show you in a second, which is an APK and an IPA file, which you can load onto your own local device. So you can start today. And also there's the charity site which has been set up, which is really kind of the communications coming out of everybody who's contributing to the project, to give you a bit more information about the project at covidsafepaths.org. I've added 2 more bit.ly links, which I've called safe hands, just because we're putting it in your safe hands and to save lives. If you go on there, you'll get direct access to the Slack channel, which is I'm on at the moment. Let me just check what the direct link is. It's covidsafepaths.slack is the actual name if you want to sign up, but that link will auto invite you, so you just literally need to put your username, your email address and your password, and then you'll be able to open that up in your Slack account. If you want to make sure you fill out the form as well, so the link at the bottom is the Safe Hands one, gives you the volunteer form, which is asking you a few questions like what could you do, what could you do to help, and so now I'm just going to kind of put it back over to the guys to do a quick poll on how you could potentially get involved, and just put that poll out, and then I'm going to show you some ways of how you can get access to the mobile app and start crowd testing today. Okay, so the question that you've got on your screen at the moment is, would you like to sign up and contribute, yes or no? Now, partly behind the poll, what we were going to do, there was kind of two things. Yes was kind of, yes, I'm happy to share my data and kind of get more involved. No, I don't really want to share my data, but I'm happy to get involved as far as, using another device, a test device that we can provide you to actually go there and provide you with the synthetic JSON file. So they're the kind of two things which we're talking about doing, and we just get the results up on the screen now to kind of get a kind of an idea of people's interesting. So yeah, so let's hit this. Do you have a spare phone to test? This could be your own personal phone. It could be an old phone that you've got. Remember, old phones are probably better than a new phone. So, if you've got another phone to test, or, can we provide you with a phone to test this on with it installed and all set up, ready to go? Okay, so now we can get the poll up. Hopefully we'll get some results. So yeah, I think there's a lot of people who've got a spare phone out there, which is fantastic, which is a good 70%. 30% of you probably don't have a phone. If you're an Android phone user, easy quick tip: if you go down to settings, go to about, then go to your build information. If you tap on the build version 5 or 6 times, it'll enable developer mode, which means that you can literally plug in a device like I have now, which is an Android device form factor, and that will allow you to turn development mode on, and then you can literally plug that into your computer and it'll be ready to run Appium. So I'm going to show you a couple of quick demos. I'm going to take questions on the last demo because it might run a little bit. Now, if you've got a Apple machine, now this is really useful. So I've got this kind of obviously if you've got something like a MacBook, that's fantastic. I'm also got a MacBook Mini there to help, and also, as you can see in the background, I've got a Mac as well. All that run have the ability to run Xcode and also be able to generate a virtual device. So if you look on the right hand side here, we've got an iPhone SE, and the iPhone SE can be a real pain. So I've got an SE here, and obviously the form factor with the SE is much smaller, which means you do get a lot of problems, especially as this is a React native mobile device. If you've got really old devices like the first iPhones, that's great. But if you don't have those devices, then what you can do is you can select any of those devices there from the list. So we've got, we're not doing tablets as such in the first release, but things like the SE, like the iPhone X, we've got a brand new one that's just loaded, which is the SE 2020. They're all great devices to be able to test on, but you'll be able to spin up a virtual one using this application. So all you need is Xcode, which is a completely free tool. Then you just go to simulators, and then you can just launch this and install the IPA file on your Mac. Now, of course, there's a challenge around if you don't have a Mac and maybe you're on a PC. You can see that I literally recorded this today at 5 minutes before the presentation launched. But the other option is obviously from an Android, which is what's gone live now. You can just use the Android Studio, which is a free application to download. It's also gives you access to any type of configuration. So you can actually load foldables. So this is like a foldables form factor. You could also run the latest version of Android 11 on there. And we could do exactly the same thing. So I can inject a GPS location from somewhere like Copenhagen, and it artificially will inject that into the phone device when I launch the app. So lots of capabilities are that's just straight in the Android app. Now the Android app will work on both PC and Macs quite easy. Xcode is unfortunately only Apple, but you can also plug in your own device. So if I plugged in my Android device now, once I've unlocked it in developer mode, I can then, that device will then appear on that device list. The same as if you plug your iPhone into Xcode, it will say, do you trust this computer? You say yes. It will then allow you to actually launch that computer up. So there's two kind of platforms that give you access to emulators. Now, of course, if you've got your own phone and you want to actually do something with it, there's the guys at Eggplant are helping at the moment. The iOS gateway and Android gateway are completely free. You can load them on your PC and Mac. And if you're familiar with something like Appium, you can connect to that device. So in this example, I'm connected to my own personal phone, and I'm able to then automate against it. I could automate using those two emulators. So if I've got those emulators running, I just add those emulators to the desired capability. But if not, you can literally just plug in your phone device, and if you notice in the background, all you need is the name of the device. So whatever you've decided to call that device, you just need to put that in, and also the type of technology you're doing. So there's a number of different competing technologies. But what happens is once it's done, it'll launch up the actual mobile device itself. You'll see the app load, and then you'll be able to swipe on it. You'll be able to be able to record it. The recorder then outputs to Python, Java, or any other language, and you're also then be able to interact with those objects. And as you can see there, I'm now getting information. If I scroll further down, I'll be able to extract, say, for instance, the more COVID ID as an information set to check that works from a language perspective. So it's as easy as that. Plug in your device, load up Appium, give the details, and you can start automating tests or doing some manual exploratory testing. Now, I'm going to open up two questions whilst this is running in the background because it's a longer video. But first, I'm just going to explain how you can get access to remote apps in the cloud. So the guy, Iran, and the team at Perfecto have give us our own tenant ID. So if you sign up with the free trial, so I've just used help@coronavirus.fo, which is that email that I gave out earlier. Once you sign up on the free trial aspect, it'll send you an email with your credentials, and then all you need to do is literally go to the login, mobile cloud login, and then you'll be ready to be able to do manual testing and analyze that information. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of 4 or 5 different ways that you can help. You can see here that actually we're going into into Perfecto, and I'm actually selecting the iPhone SE 2020. This is a physical device running iOS 13.4. It's only just come out. It's available to you now. You can, if you notice when in Appium, you could actually connect to a remote device. So you don't even need to use this screen. You can actually connect to it by clicking on the capabilities and exporting those values that you needed to actually populate the Appium connector. And there's a Perfecto option in Appium by default. And what we can see is I'm uploading the latest version of the COVID 0.94 IPA. We're waiting for the 1.0 to drop, and hopefully we'll be in the App Store in the coming days. But once that SafePaths app's loaded on, I can then go through. Now, for this first example, I've actually I've turned off location sensors, so I've not actually got giving access to any application for my location data. So this was a test that one of the other QA resources asked me to just check what would the journey be if you can't even access location data. So this allows me to then still go through, enable notifications, but it comes up with the correct one that says location tracking is currently disabled, and then it'll redirect me to that component so I can I can demonstrate how that particular case flow works. Now, that's great, but I want to give you another example, so I'm just going to end that using that device for a second, and then I want to give you an example of Android. So Android's obviously a very difficult platform because most people are running the latest version of the iOS, unless, for instance, there's a reason like your device is too old to run iOS 13. But if I scroll down through the list, you'll see there's actually 10,000 devices available. There's just a subset allowed on this tenant, what we've got available. And as you can see, there's the new Galaxy 10. There's also the access to the actual flippable devices. So these are these dual screen devices which have just come through. So to give you an idea, of testing something that actually is a flippable phone, this, we can also test that, and that's obviously really important because whether an app docks into the top half of the screen, or if you turn the tablet round and create a phablet, part of it is, it gives you multiple different views. So we're taking the latest release, which is version 1, which has just landed as of today. I'm now going to just click the play button, which then launches it. And when I launch it, you can see it's launched across the entire foldable screen. So we're able to go through, we're able to go click get started. This is the official terms and conditions, which says, yes, I'm happy to, share and consent my location data. This will not be shared with third parties apart from health organizations. And then I could actually go into the app and start using it. So, we've onboarded, which is kind of going through, give access to, your set up your phone. So turn on, as you see, the flow slightly changed with the released product, where you choose your health authority straight away. So we've got one that's set up because we're rolling out this in Haiti first, and then the
Jonathan, we lost the audio again. John, we lost the audio.
So there's an example there. It says, only allow it for one time. So next time you come in, you can check whether or not it prompts you again. So, there's lots of different scenarios. And of course, the devil's in the data, right? So the data is really important because that will work out, it'll make or break the project. So yeah, this is, hopefully gives you an idea of ways you can get involved, ways that you can help contribute to, so either in sharing your sanitized data, or we can actually go through and help. I can sit there with it and scrub data off if you need it, right? We've got a team of data scientists out in Barcelona who are helping with that synthetic data, so they need anyone who can share, who's prepared to share data. You can see on this device as well, a bit similar to what we did on Android Studio, and you can also do on the Xcode, is you can insert locations from a GPS location. So you could create a test scenario, which is, I insert, I'm at this location, at this GPS location. Then I spin up another phone, because you can open multiple phones on here and go to the same location. So they're both sat in the same coffee shop, maybe Starbucks or something. And then you both submit your data, so you both share your location information, and then upload it using the publishing tool, and then you've actually got a scenario which should come back with a red icon for both of those people to say that they've actually been potentially infected. I'm giving an example here. If we've got the device log information of what's going on, I've actually turned on network virtualization, so I'm throttling the connection. So these are real devices connected to real cell, but actually what it's going to do is it's going to override that information, and it's actually going to make it so there's packet loss, jitter on the line, poor connection. And what we see with the poor connection is not only does it take a very long time for the safe paths news information to come through, but actually when I click on the news path, it just comes up with an error. So that's great, because that gives me the ability now to report that, which I have literally just reported that in the dev underscore app dev channel, which is on Slack. And straight away we've got developers who are sitting there going, okay, how did you do this? How do you reproduce it? So as you're going to see in 2 minutes time, it actually creates a test report with a video which shows exactly when it happened, exactly what you were doing as far as what you were clicking on, what you'd done before. And actually there's a report which is actionable that someone can go off and use right now. So you can see that's been generated. I can view that report. I can view on the left hand side every single step that I've gone through. So if you did some exploratory testing and you had, you didn't really know where you'd just gone through, you can do that as well, because you can go back through and say, oh, I touched here, I swipe down to get the notifications to say that it's currently accessing my GPS. I swipe back onto my camera app and now it's crashed. And you've got all that information that's you can pass over to the developer, including all the logging information. So what we're doing from an APM perspective, and the really nice people at Splunk for Good have been working on the COVID-19 platform. We've got crash analytics coming from things like Firebase. We've got telemetry data telling us where people are going on journeys. So, there's lots of enrichment to help us do testing in production, and we need you. So I'm going to let this just run round in a circle, but I'm going to open up to any questions and try and get a little bit of interaction with everybody. I'm going to, I'll put the at the end, I'll put the links on just in case you hadn't got them before. I know the team will help by actually sending out those links afterwards. So if you want to get involved, you can. And so, but first of all, I want to just say thank you to everybody who's attended today, watching on demand, and also people who are contributing as well.
Thanks a lot for the talk, John. It was pretty insightful. We kind of now know how it technically works, the app. We do have a few questions that we got previously, so I'll just quickly type it out here. So we have a question from Siddharth. The question is, what framework is the app built on? What about data governance and sovereignty? And what test automation frameworks are we using for this?
Okay, so yeah, I can go through those ones quite easily actually. So first of all, it's built on React Native mobile. So the good thing about React Native is it builds an Android build and an iOS build at the same time, and they share the same code base. So the functionality between versions, i.e. devices, should be very similar. So also for those who are not familiar with React as a framework, it's what Facebook use. So, things like Messenger is a good example of what a React Native mobile looks like. You don't really need to know that. The real difference is, within a React Native, again, an open source project, there's limitations to what we do. So, for instance, what we're capturing from telemetry, for instance. So, we're using Google Firebase, which is the kind of the default for React Native to send, what you're doing on the mobile and what scenario you're going through. But we're also, which is kind of stuff that's in private beta, we're also capturing the actual the object you're interacting with. So that way we can generate an Appium script out of the back of it. So that's kind of an idea of what the actual app itself is built on. Now we saw on the other side of things, which was the sanitizer that is built and hosted locally within a health authority. So it's behind the firewall, it's in-house, and it's a standard kind of REST API based micro container which runs in Docker. But you can actually, if you go onto the GitHub project, there's a script, what's a README build script, which will allow you to run and host that Docker on your local machine if you want to see the end-to-end flow. Also, if you go to Safe Hands project, the MIT Safe Hands site, you can actually go to a location scrubber which is hosted in the cloud as well. So I'll make sure I send that link. So that's the first kind of question. The second one was around what about data sovereignty and data privacy? So like I said, we were speaking, I was on the BCS call chatting with some from kind of legal and regulatory kind of people. There's different laws around the use of GPS information and sharing that. And obviously we're complying with those regulatory bodies. But there is also a catch around public health. So if someone is infected, you can share your data and you're protected under that kind of client privacy of being in the as a medical authority. So when my uncle was diagnosed, I recommended to him to and he had an Android phone, to share his data, because that will help build that database up. But you have to opt into that and allow them to actually share that information. And I understand people may be concerned about tracking it back. That's really where that scrubber's there for, to remove any location data such as your home and your workplace, or any place that is identifiable. So if you're every Tuesday at Starbucks, you want to remove that, remove it, that's fine. If you are just happy to share traveling when you go away on a holiday historically in the past, then you can isolate it, like I did with the Apple, visiting Apple HQ. Part of it is I will just scrub the rest of the data, which might be the hotel that I stopped in, or where my address at the time. I'll remove that information and just focus on the paths of me driving down Infinite Loop or something, and just kind of going and visiting somewhere, and use that as historical data. So that's the second one, is, well, what is the policy around there? Of course, there's a European policy, there's a US policy, there's Australia have got their own. You'll have to look at it from a regulatory perspective. We're trying to comply the best we possibly can from the project, and that's why if you go to the project website, you'll see it's a privacy by design, privacy first, because none of your data ever leaves your phone unless you export it. And that point, you're saying, underneath there's a message saying, I'm happy to share my information with this health authority. So your relationship is directly with your health authority or your GP or your hospital that you're dealing with. So that's kind of the data sovereignty frameworks perspective. I think you saw 4 or 5 there for local mobile device testing. So if you want to, like we said, tap on the Android 3 times on your about, turn developer mode on, you can plug your phone in, you can download Appium today and connect to that device and create Appium scripts. Those Appium scripts can run in, say, for instance, the Perfecto cloud. So once you've recorded that script, you can rerun that against every single device in Perfecto. So thanks to the Perfecto team and Iran, who's a good friend, who's actually give available to cloud-based mobile devices. So you can go and access that now. So like I said, you can go to perfecto.io. You can sign up. Just send me, some data. You can send me a message to say I've signed up on help at Coronavirus.fo, and I would be more than happy to help you with whatever you need to set up as far as frameworks are concerned. So we've got the Perfecto one. We've also got Eggplant, and we've got Eggplant licenses thanks to Anthony and John Bates. Dr. John Bates, who's the CEO of the company, is also given us access to Eggplant licenses, which you can use to do those synthetic automated tests. So you saw 5 hours. We built the model, and it ran every permutation of every automation possible. So part of it is that's another option. And then you've got the emulators. You've got the Xcode for running on Mac, and the Android Studio to run on Mac and PC, which will give you the emulators which will be able to spin up on your local machine. So that's kind of maybe the 5 frameworks that we're using. Everyone's open to kind of contributing to this project. It's a completely open source project, and I know there's some other questions in there about how are we ensuring sustainability of the project. Do we rely on data shared by the COVID infected? So I'll answer that one first. Is, of course, that's the core principle behind contact tracing, is as someone submitted to hospital, they will be asked if they would help. They'd be interviewed anyway to ask if they are happy to tell them where they've been for the last week to make sure, if they haven't had any interactions or they've been waiting in, the hospital lounge for a certain period of time or something, they just need to know where you've been. So location services and the fact that Android already does that by default, it means that you've got a whole stack of information. And that's why if you go to takeout at Google, you can see what information they've been capturing about you, and make sure, if you are infected, like my uncle, part of it is you're doing that for the greater good. And then also, what is, the question is, what if someone doesn't want to share their data at a particular time frame? Absolutely. So, partly what we showed you with the retracting tool is you can say, I'll share just my last 14 days. So you can literally, once you save that, you can see the JSON file and it's retracted all the information. So it literally just has time, date stamp, and a longitude and latitude. So that's literally the only two pieces of information it's got. And then you can also see from the reaction tool, which you can load it back up as well, that it's removed your home location, it's removed your work location, unless you want to share your work location because you're concerned that potentially you've interacted with other people at work. Then yes, that's how we're going to do it currently to solve that. The next question which we've got is, what are the future plans to extend this project beyond the pandemic closure? First of all, I think we know that it's going to repeat. This is potentially could be a yearly thing. The thing with any vaccine is that like the common flu, is it evolves every year, so the strains are always slightly different, and therefore potentially this kind of technology is going to be used again. The reason why South Korea had such didn't have the same levels as everyone else is because they'd already had an outbreak a few years before, and they'd learned a lot of lessons from that, and they'd put that into place with the public health authorities, so they had a way of containing this much quicker. But I expect this isn't going to be the first or last time we see something of this variety that we need to be able to use contact tracing for. Part of what we saw with the smart city kind of example is, you have to own your own privacy, and if you want to share your data, and that means part of it is contributing to a smart city project like becoming carbon neutral. There's so much reuse to this technology, and MIT have actually reprovisioned quite a lot of this from a project which they call Privacy Kit, which was developed before by their health department to really help how you can do trace and test technologies. So that hopefully
Sean, we lost your voice.
So there's another question around, are you planning to merge functional and performance automated tests or using separate tools? Great question. We're planning to do performance testing and load testing using the functional scripts. So things like Appium, once you've created Appium scripts, we can reuse those for load testing as well. So I've been working with a number of different teams from Micro Focus and Load Runner, which people are very familiar with the Neotis R&D team, which is a Java-based system, which again can take things like Appium and Selenium and run those in headless mode. So, and also Eggplant Functional. So, we can, who are also involved in doing contract tasting for other projects. So, everything we do manually or by automation will have massive reuse value, and we'll be looking to do that to help, because as you can expect, the submission portion of JSON, even though you do 710 points, 7,000 points a week, the JSON file is actually quite small. It's only about 100K. So the one you saw of when I was based in Silicon Valley was a meg, but that was a full month's worth of GPS data with a 5-minute 5-minute polling frequency. There's also is authenticity of success of plasma therapy. I'm not quite sure who the best one to answer there. You know, like I said, I'm doing a session with the head of implementation from MIT this Wednesday. This Wednesday for the British Computer Society. I can share that link. He'll be live on the there, and he's the head of implementation, and also the head of some of the other departments will be on that one. So that's an option if you want to go and see and ask them questions. I think that would be a good one for them. You know, the next question really is around, is it, I know we're kind of 10 minutes over, but you know, this is more kind of Q&A anyway, but you know, is this a trial and error method? And the answer is, you know, part of the importance of why we're doing this project is we need to reduce the amount of false positives that are actually getting reported. And the only way we can do that is by running huge amounts of test scenarios. So, you know, when I mentioned the Copenhagen Smart City project, we created 5 billion historical transactions. So the guys at Grid Tools and a guy called Hugh Price helped us generate from those delta sets, so people sharing just the walking around Copenhagen, the students were able to generate 5 billion historical journeys over a month's period. So that way we could see what it would look like in that city for a full month. We're doing exactly the same thing now. We're taking real data which is happening in the real world, and also data that we're synthetically generating. So that way we can go, I'd like to be able to find a GPS file which, you know, travels past somebody in a car, but you know, I'm traveling in a car, but you know, I'm going the same speed as traveling on a public bus. So how does the system know that I was traveling on my own in my own car versus traveling on a public bus? Well, in that particular scenario, we're using Google, and we've got some keys for Google APIs to say, was that a bus? And you know, it will identify that there was a bus route going on there, or by the frequency of how many times it stops at certain locations against you know, a timetable. Would then, that scenario would say, actually that person was in a car and therefore they were on their own and there's no way they could be done. So that's getting rid of those false positives, is identify multimodal transportation types like trains that are doing 130 versus, you know, people walking on a bike, stopping in a location. And this is the hardest thing, is because of the polling frequency of Google location data being anywhere between 2.5 minutes and 5-minute polling. Obviously that doesn't help us very much when it comes to more accurate speed data. GPS loggers would typically be polling every 5 to 10 seconds, which helps us understand speed, which then allows us to translate that to, well, I got on a bus, I rode a bike, I then got on the underground, you know, all that kind of information. So that's how we're doing it. So there is an approach, there's a whole team working on Confluence, putting a plan to all the different types of scenarios that we're doing. So, you know, you can get involved with that. We also have a test management tool which you can go in and look at all the test scenarios that we've got. As far as kind of the next question is a simple doc for installing and testing on an Android phone. Yes, I've got a video from, you know, literally plugging it into your computer. I'm using, if anyone is out there is kind of saying, oh, I want to be able to use a mobile device and maybe be able to record screens on my local PC or Mac, I use a platform, an app called Reflector 3. You can use the trial version, be absolutely fine. And what that does is it lets you screencast to your local PC, so that way you can record what's going on your phone while you're actually using it on your phone. Of course, there's another option which you can go into settings and accessibility and turn on the record screen within the phone and then just record it there. But it's easier if you've got control of it on your PC. So I've got a demo of how that actually fits together. I can share that with people, and I can also share a way of just showing them how to get the Appium application up, or any kind of VNC kind of application to see your screen and control it from your PC. So that's one. Does testing cover things like phone setup for kids using apps like Family Link? Yeah, no, this is an absolutely great question. You know, obviously their different journeys, having permissions would be restricted if it was a child, for instance, and if you've got family sharing on, or you've got screen time implemented, part of it will be, well, what would it work under that scenario? So that's a great example of a scenario that may not work because a kid's phone is locked down. But part of when you have a kid's phone, you're turning on things like Find My family. So part of it is your GPS information is being tracked because you want to know where Find My phone is, where they are anyway. So there might be already some location data there which we can leverage. But a really great question on there. The last question which we've got before we go, and I know we've run over by 15 minutes here, so thanks to everyone who has managed to stay on, and I know 90% of you have. How are we going to get various government departments on board with this project? This is a great question. So like I said, we met with people from legislation and legal to kind of understand what the current policies are and what we have to adhere to in different countries, and this is going to be a challenge, and hopefully it may call for some legislation changes just for in certain countries where location data is prohibited. But I think if you think about how Google and iOS are using that data in those countries for Find My phone, there's no real reason why this is any different, because again that data is being sent up to Google and Apple. This data it resides on your phone. So part of it is how do we make sure we can get through those legislation challenges like Apple and Google have done, and they are working on this project and this helping by getting this Bluetooth API technology out to market as absolutely soon. So I'm guessing you will see a new iOS 13.5 drop sometime soon with that new capabilities to support contact tracing. And I think one of the things which we've been discussing from a legislation perspective is things like, well, the Bluetooth version is probably okay. If we turn off GPS, we use Bluetooth, then we're only using the proximity sensors. That might be, more secure, even though there's been concerns that Bluetooth is still a challenge around security. So, part of it is different countries will have different implementations, and that's why we need your help. So again, I'm going to say a massive thank you to everybody who's definitely stayed around and asked questions. And also people who are going to get involved. So, you can contact me at help@coronavirus.fo. You can also, with those links that I put up before, you can connect to any of those, get onto the Slack channel, get involved, jump onto the Slack channel. You just need to go to testing. It's one word, and it's the project path. And I think actually we've already had I'm not going to mention the name for data privacy, but we've already had 3 people join the channel since we did this presentation. So that's obviously really great. So I'd also like to thank the staff at Clavent who've obviously arranged this so quickly. And let's go on that journey together. I don't think social distancing means you have to be like the Tesla spaceman and go into space. I think we can manage this through contact tracing technology and make save lives through the MIT Safe Paths project. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, John, for the talk. John, we lost the audio again. You can just see the mouse moving. Yeah. Hello? Okay. Anyway, so that kind of brings us towards the end of the session. And we really want to thank Jonathan for the insightful talk that he gave. And for everyone who would like to contribute in any way, if you have the links that Jonathan shared, that's perfect. If not, there's an email address that I'm sending out on the chat that you can send your queries on, and we'll get you connected to Jonathan directly. And before we kind of conclude the session, we want it's time to kind of reveal what our email partners surprise was. So we have a special offer from HandySynth, and as we have partnered with HandySynth, they are giving away a free email plan for 3 months. We can send out 40,000 emails for free to 2,000 contacts without any cost. You can utilize this plan and experience the flow of HandySend's email tool. And trust us, we use the same and it works smooth and it's great. So if you want any information about that, you can again send us a mail on contact@Clavent, or you can check out our website or social media handles. They've been mentioned there quite often. And thanks for all the time that you contributed. We hope that you really like the session and you take away something good from this whole session. And we really urge you all to kind of contribute to this in whatever way you can. It's mostly skills. Again, if you have any questions, this is the email ID, contact@clavent.com. Just send us any mail, query, questions that you have or feedback, and we'll get you connected to Jonathon directly. Thank you all for your time and hope you have a nice Saturday and a nice weekend overall. Thank you.